Hey there, I'm Jeff Elkins, and this is the Dialogue Doctor Podcast. Today on the podcast, I sit down with a group of the community members to analyze and learn from James Baldwin's short story, Sonny's Blues. Welcome back. If you're a returning listener, it's good to have you return. If you are a new listener and this is your first episode, hey, this is the show. These are my monkeys. This is my circus. Let's all dance. I'm just kidding. Yeah, thanks for coming. I appreciate you being here today and giving us time. Before we get into the conversation about Sonny's Blues, let's talk a little bit of business, a little bit of what's happening in the Dialogue Doctor world. So right now there's only one thing happening. We finished our spring dash. The dash is our 80-day write together program. We do 30 days of planning together, 30 days of sprint writing where we all write as hard as we possibly can, and then set ourselves up to edit for a couple weeks. It's great. It's a really fantastic community bonding experience. It's wonderful to write with other writers, and we all get a ton of work done, which is really nice. So especially if you're blocked, if you've been working on the same story for a long time, the dash is going to help you kind of like deconstruct it, put it back together, and then get some words on the page. So we just finished our spring dash. We do these twice a year, and it was so successful. People were so excited about it. They were like, can you go ahead and put up the fall dash? And I was like, no, because I'm not that disciplined and organized. And this is just a one-man shop, so there is no assistant to do it for me. It's just me. I am the assistant. So I was like, no, I cannot. But what I can do is put up a wait list. So if you want to sign up to get information on the fall dash, it will happen as it does every year. We will start the planning in October. We will write in November, and then we will edit in December, 2 weeks of editing in December. So if you would like to join us for that dash, you can go to dialoguedoctor.com and click on the dash button in the menu, and then I'll take you to a sign-up form that's like, hey, give me more information on the dash when it comes out. And I'll probably have a sign-up sheet, and I'll probably have an actual registration page up in August, but if you sign up for that, you'll get notifications about hey, registration's open. And I'm going to say it like that in the email. I'm like, hey, registration's open. So I don't know how I'm going to make my email sound that way, but I will. Challenge accepted. But I think that's the only thing happening right now. Oh, I'll be speaking. I just spoke at InkersCon. It was fantastic. InkersCon's a beast. I had no idea. I got membership to the conference because I was speaking, and there was a lot happening. It was a big thing. Really, those tickets are too cheap. They should charge more. That was a big con. It's 2 weeks, so many sessions. I couldn't go to everything because it is kind of a crazy time. 2 kids graduating college. I'll get into that in the personal update section. That's not what happens right now. But it was a really impressive conference. So that just passed, and I am speaking. My next speaking gig is I've been accepted to speak at the Allied thing this year, the Allied online conference this year, which is 24 hours of speakers. I shall be one of those hours. So you'll be able to find me there. If you go look at the Alliance of Independent Authors, they are incredible, and you should be, if you're an indie author, you should definitely be a member of the Alliance. So that's, I'll be doing that. And then I'll also be speaking at the Maryland Writers Association. They've given me a 2-hour workshop slot. So a 2-hour workshop slot. So I don't know what accent that was. So no one be offended because it was nondescript nonsense. I will have that. I'll have that 2-hour slot, and I'll be helping the people. I'm going to walk all the participants through hey, let's build a character voice together. Let's talk about how it works on the page. In essence, we're going to build a character wheel, which is something I talk about a lot in the community, but and that we have talked a lot about on the podcast before. It's a tool you can use to like create your character voices and like help yourself keep them consistent through books and series. So I'm just going to take them through that process for 2 hours, and we're going to do kind of a 2-hour workshop on it. So that'll be a lot of fun. Come and join that as well. That's in person in Maryland. So you don't have to be part of the Maryland Writers Association to sign up for it, but you do have to come to Maryland to be to be a part of that. That one's not online. But I think that's it. I think that's everything happening for us right now in Dialogue Doctor World. I mean, JP's kind of out conquering the world right now. He's getting offers from audiobook people for his amazing series that he's written. He's just finished his incredible Kickstarter, and he's great. And Laura is working on her Hire Casey editing book, which is her new method for self-editing, which is incredible as well. So it's not all that's happening. I feel weird being like, that's all that's... The only things happening are the things that matter to me. That's not all that's happening. JP and Laura, the other two coaches, also are like... Not also. JP and Laura, the other two coaches, are like taking over the world as I speak nonsensically into a microphone. But that is, that's not all that's happening. Sorry, I really got struck by the fact that I said that's all that's happening. That's not all that's happening. This world does exist outside of myself. There are things that happen that aren't me. Sorry, this is off the rails. I'm gonna pull myself back now. Personal update. It's been this is crazy season for my family. I've talked about this for a couple weeks now in a row, 2 kids graduating and all that, but I did get to take my third son. I have 5 children. My third son is going to start at the University of Delaware this fall, and he is doing their international program in Rome, which is crazy to think that my son, he got scholarships and all kinds of great things to do this, and he's been accepted this Global World Scholars Program. And we went to orientation this week, and it was fantastic. I gotta say, I've been to a lot of college visits because I have 2 kids in college already, and I've been to a lot of orientations. I actually haven't. This was my first orientation. My wife has gone to the first 2, but I heard about them extensively. And University of Delaware, where to go? I mean, they turned it on. It was very impressive. But I think the best part was being there with him and watching him like get excited about his future and watching him imagine what it's going to be like to be in Rome as a student. And I'm super excited to him. I've never been to Italy. I went to Europe once when I was a teenager with my father because he was like speaking at a conference, and he took me as his quote unquote secretary. And every day we were in Copenhagen and then Amsterdam, and every day he would have to go to like talks and conferencey stuff. So he'd say, this was before like cell phones, and because I'm old, and he'd say, here, take this address. This is where we will have dinner. Go explore the city, and I will see you then. And I was like 17. It was a blast. So I'm excited but that's the only time I've been to Europe. I've never been to Italy. I'm super pumped that my son gets to do this, and I'm really excited that he gets to have this semester there. So it was really great. That was our big update today. And then this week, my wife works as the children's director for a rather large church in our area, and tomorrow starts her VBS. For those who are uneducated in American Christian culture, VBS is Vacation Bible School, where the church takes your children for a week and does a whole cadre of programming for them. And it is big and it is huge. And my wife has like 500 kids showing up, and there's an entire squadron of volunteers. It's going to be a fantastic time. So that is also happening this week, and everyone will be tired. That's what happens to my family during VBS. Everyone is guaranteed to be incredibly tired. So anyway, that's my personal update. I finished a draft of a screenplay. I've talked about this on the podcast before. This year I'm trying to write 4 screenplays. Wrote one first 3 months of the year, and then I'm on the second quarter trying to write the second one. And my friend Sean Paul Murphy, fantastic author with a very like strong career in screenplay writing, has invited me to like rework one of his, and so I've been working on it, and I finished it this week, just in time to hit my 3-month mark, and I'm learning so much. It's such a different craft than novel writing. Some things are the same, some things are different. It's just interesting. I enjoy. Don't tell anybody. I enjoy this a lot more than writing novels. I've written 13 novels and they were fun, but man, screenplays, they're like all the things that I like and they take away all the things that I don't like. So I really like it. It was really great to work on. I'm learning so much from Sean and from what he's doing. It was really fantastic to be able to, I just appreciate him giving me the opportunity. And I think it's pretty good. It's kind of a West Wing meets road trip movie. It's about a guy who everybody wants to run for president and isn't traveling across the country. And he kind of is convinced to run as he travels across the country. So I just gave Sean my draft today, and we'll see how it comes. I'm also working on Nerds. JP and I are working on the second season of Nerds. We've got the Kickstarter up. Nerds are monster books. They're like the last Nerds, I think, came out to like 160,000 something words. They are beasts of urban fantasy books that are comedies, which is I love. I don't know, like I really adore writing comedy. So yeah, they're fun. They're like Ghostbusters meets Brooklyn Nine-Nine is how we describe them. But so we're working on season. I'm working on that too. So it's just great. I'm in a solid. You have these spaces where you're like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't even know if this is going to be anything. To quote Jerry Seinfeld, is this anything? You have these spaces where like that's the thing. And I've been in one of those for like most of 2024, and part of 2023 was one of those for me. I was working on a nonfiction book. It was very introspective and difficult to write and sad, and it just like was really hard to churn through. And now it's in a drawer and will never see the light of day. I mean, maybe it will someday, but not right now. And so it's nice to be back to writing comedy and to be doing things I love. And I think, especially in this weird world where it's really hard to know what's going to sell, what's not going to sell. It's hard to be like, can I still write fast, publish, repeat, and keep up with the market? Should I be writing using AI? Like all these questions around everything kind of puts us in this like weird space. I think it's tough. And I think the thing that we need to do when the market is in chaos and the world seems to be changing is what we love. And so I love writing Nerds. I love it. I love right now I'm really loving doing screenplays. So I think I'm going to start like drafting my next thinking about my next screenplay next week. Because I said I'd do 4, I got to start the next one. I'm learning they take me about 2 months. So I got to start thinking about the next one. But yeah, anyway, there's my personal update. Okay, so this session is a little different than what I normally put on, but I thought it was a really fantastic conversation, so I wanted to share it. We have a community that we call them the Dialoguers, and you can sign up for it at Jeff Elkins or patreon.com /Jeff Elkins, or you can go to dialoguedoctor.com and click on the community button. It'll take you there. And twice a month we do a call, and often they're learning calls where we're like taking something, we're breaking it down, we're trying to learn from it. I really love these calls. I think they're fantastic. And this is one we did way back at the beginning of the year on James Baldwin's short story, Sonny's Blues. And I love James Baldwin. I would put him up there as one of the greatest writers of our time. I think there's so much we can all learn from James Baldwin, and I'm enchanted by this short story. I think it's an incredible short story, just powerfully written. And so I love, so the Dialoguers met, we read it, we talked about it, and I wanted you to, I mean, not all the Dialoguers, I think there's just 4 of us on this call. And so I wanted you to hear it. I do pick up in the middle of the conversation in this session because whenever we get on a dialogue or call, we all know each other pretty well. We're in the Slack. There's a dialogue or Slack together. We're constantly talking about how work is going and how things are moving. And so we at the first of every call we do like personal updates of like, hey, how's our work going? And y'all don't need to hear that because that's just for us. So I pick up in the middle of the call right when we're starting to talk about Sonny's Blues. So yeah, I hope you get a ton out of it. Let's get into the call.
Okay, let's talk Sonny's Blues. Did everybody get a chance to like read some of it?
Yeah.
All right.
I mentioned earlier I've only read maybe the first half, so sorry I didn't
Yeah.
get to complete it, but I'm curious to everybody's thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So Baldwin, how many of y'all have read Baldwin before?
Yeah, the stuff you've
Yeah,
put out.
Mary's like, yeah, the things you forced me to read.
I read it was, I mean, I know who he is,
Oh,
but
go tell the mountain. That I really enjoyed. Go
Yeah, go
tell him on
tell
the
him the
mountain.
mountain. Oh, yeah. Um, so Baldwin wrote this in 1957. Um, and then while he was living in Paris, and then it was originally written for the Parisian Review. He used to write short stories. That's like their New Yorker, if you don't know what that is. And then he
very
used to be,
fancy.
yeah, he used to be a regular columnist, like writing short stories for them in the 50s. And then all of his short stories revolve around, life as often a gay black man, sometimes just a black man in the United States, where he grew up in Harlem. And so they all kind of revolve around that. Uh, from a kind of pre-civil rights perspective, he was kind of calling for civil rights at the time. He didn't publish this in the States until 1965 in a collection of short stories. So it came out in Paris in 1957, and then it was formally published in the States in 1965. It's a story that a lot of people read. I've been told, I don't have a master's in literature, but I've been told it's a story a lot of people read because it's a good example of how he paces dialogue and kind of where he invests in and spends emotional energy.
Mhm.
So, um, I want to talk about that a little bit today, and we can get into that some. But what did y'all? Let's just do general impressions. What did you think of what you read?
I really liked it, and I thought because with my like student hat on, that because I knew you would ask, the thing that I noticed is there wasn't a ton of description. But when there was description, it was super specific and evocative, like she's the mom's dressed in the blue suit. But
Hmm.
that was it. Like he didn't describe how this, how the sofa was or how the sound, even the sounds, a lot of it. It was the whole thing kind of felt like a monologue to me
Yeah,
in a good way. And then the other thing, the thing that super impressed me was the very end when he wrote about the music, because music, is a auditory emotional experience, and he made it a word
yeah,
emotional experience, and he um did such a good job, I thought, about explaining. I mean, I don't play an instrument, but I enjoy music
yeah,
as a audience member, and I thought he did such a good job of explaining the dance the musicians go through on stage with each other, about there's a leader and then he might step back and I thought, but then there was an emotional underpinning to it, and I just thought that I mean, the whole thing was amazing, but that in particular, I was like, wow, I never thought about writing about music.
yeah,
I was very impressed.
yeah. Yeah. We can get into both of those more. We'll look at both of those. We'll look at his descriptions and his writing about music. He does it with church stuff too. When you got into this section about the church worship,
Hmm.
that's a common thing Baldwin does, is he jumps into religious settings, and they often are some of his most descriptive parts. Like he leans into them pretty heavy. Yeah. Heather and Mary, anything, any of y'all's impression? You didn't have to like everything in the story either. Like, Baldwin's can be very explosive. He's not oh my gosh, I loved every word. He made me feel good. I've never
It
read
was
anything by Baldwin going, that made me feel good.
taking that side of the emotion out of it. It
Yeah.
was a little almost too stream of consciousness for me, almost to the lighthouse-ish, like Virginia Woolfish.
Yeah.
And so that for me is one of those literary things where I have a very hard time staying focused on it. So we're over here by the school. Now we're on the bus. Now we're with these people from dinner. It's
Yeah.
just like, yeah. So that for me, and I think I need to finish it to, so it's that was my first
Yeah.
take on it, was like, this is going to be hard for me to continue on with.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll talk too about how he zooms in and out of time. Because that's another thing he does.
Yes, he manipulates the time a lot.
He manipulates
from
time.
what I
Yeah.
saw. Yeah.
And it's the same thing Lindsay's talking about. He only cares about what he cares about.
Yeah, like you had to guess which war. I thought he was talking about the Vietnam War till the very end, and I was like, oh no, that was World War II.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what?
I was like, oh, World War II. Okay.
I think I'm going to go back and start it from the beginning now that I know it's from 1957.
Yeah.
That gives me a little bit of context that I was
Yeah.
missing beforehand. So,
And here's the thing, Baldwin doesn't care. I haven't heard him say this, but I can promise he doesn't care what war it is. Like he doesn't care that it's World War II. He doesn't care that it happened in Germany. He doesn't care what side was being fought for. The fact that it was a war is what's the emotional component.
And the
that
guy
he's
was
tying it.
away at war.
And the guy was away.
Mhm. Yeah.
And being away is what he cares about.
Mhm.
For this story. Other stories he might care that it's World War II. But for this story, he cares that the older brother was away.
And it was clear he didn't care. And that in itself is interesting. As someone who's super detail oriented in her storytelling, I was like, it only mattered for the movie in my head, but when I had to readjust it, I was like, oh, interesting. Like it didn't make me mad as the reader that I thought the wrong war the whole time or anything like that. That as a reader, that was really interesting to me.
Yeah. And part of what we're pulling out already with Baldwin is that, and part of the reason I like reading him in these like study times is that all Baldwin cares about is your emotional experience.
Mhm.
That's all he cares about. He cares about compelling you emotionally.
Yeah.
He doesn't care about time. He doesn't care about space. He doesn't even care in some of his books that you get the full story of the characters. As long as you feel it, that's what he cares about. That you like, Mary, you read Go Tell It on the Mountain. There are characters that just completely disappear.
Yeah, I don't care about.
Yeah. And he doesn't
really
care
care.
that you find out what happens to them because their emotional
Right.
journey's done. And sometimes their emotional journey's done before their actual like story's done. And you're like, but what happened to like plot wise? I want to know what happened to that character. Baldwin's like, now we're done. We don't need to. They're not important anymore. And so it's an interesting.
Do you think that would work now with if you were writing a book now and publishing it, like we can let that slide with him because we know he's right from a different time, but would doing that piss off readers now?
That's an interesting question.
Sorry.
No, it's a great question. What do y'all think?
Well, I think for literary fiction, I think he can do whatever he wants. If it was more genre fiction, then I think there would be expectations here that he's probably not meeting, right?
Well, for me, I hate plot holes. So I think even if it's literary fiction, I especially if I've come to care about a character, I want to know what happened. So I think I would find it irritating. But because I know he's not contemporary, I could let it slide. I don't know. I haven't read a novel of his that might irritate the crap out of me.
Here's where I'd lean on it. I think the greats, when we talk about like the pantheon of the greats, Hemingway, you know, sorry, my uh Pride, Jane Austen, Hemingway, Mary Shelley, you know, uh um Vonnegut. I would put Baldwin in that pantheon of like historically great writers. We still read him constantly. He's still taught in school, and he will be in 100 years because the greats tend to lean into what they're great at, right? Like
Interesting.
Hemingway was great at dialogue. It's what he was great at, and he leans into it. Like The Sun Also Rises, if he weren't Ernest Hemingway, he couldn't get away with it. But because he's Ernest Hemingway, and because he's so great at it, we give him a pass in it. Um, Maya Angelou, like in her poetry, there's things she does that like we wouldn't let other people get away with, but because she's proven herself to be great. Neil Gaiman, right? Like Neil Gaiman is great at writing scenes that are comedic and moving. He's so great at it, we forgive that the plot of American Gods is a nonsense plot that sucks. The plot of American Gods sucks. It's the worst plot. But we forgive it because Shadow is such a compelling character, and because Gaiman has proven himself over time to be a writer that we believe is on among the greats. So like I think Baldwin does what Baldwin does. He writes powerful emotional journeys. And could you and I get away with writing this? No. If you wrote this and handed it to an editor, they'd be like, oh my gosh, there's so much wrong with this. But Baldwin proved himself over decades, and a lot of them get rejected for a long time. Baldwin was rejected for a long time. And it took people understanding, like, no, this guy has something here. He's doing something that we love, that we finally accepted. Like, can you write like Jose Saramago, who's one of the greats from Latin America? Can you write like him and get away with having no punctuation or paragraph spacing?
No, I can't. That
No,
would
you
annoy
can't.
me.
But if you did it, an editor would be like, "Hey, Lindsay, let me teach you how to construct a sentence." Right? But Saramago has been doing it for so long that we're
It's
like,
like
yeah,
it's like Tolkien's run-on sentences.
yeah. Tolkien's run-on
Like
sentences.
I did not care at all in junior high and high school, and now I'm like,
Yeah. Look, if you put a song in a book that goes for 5 pages, as your developmental editor, I'm gonna be like, hey, take this out. But Tolkien does it every chapter, and we're like, we love it. Let's go. Like, because he invented fantasy. So like that, I mean, not fully, but mostly he invented modern fantasy. So I think we let the greats get away with things because they're doing something that's great. So we let them break all the rules, right? Like, could anybody but James Joyce have written Ulysses? No. If anybody else tried, we'd be like, no, take it
well,
back.
if they had done it, it would have been much shorter
It would have been, yeah. But we let
and
him do
palatable.
it
And
because,
easier to read.
yeah, because we
Look,
recognize
that's
this as a
another stream of
culture.
consciousness.
Oh, that's the
It's not.
most. That's the most
That's
stream
yeah.
of
Oh,
consciousness.
I
Yeah,
couldn't get through it.
yeah. But does that make sense? So, like, I think Baldwin's special, and I think we've, as culture, has dubbed him as special. So because we want to learn from what he's exceptional at, we let him get away with all kinds of things that we can't get away with until we prove ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I I have to say, I hope you're mistaken. And the reason I say that is I absolutely loved it. And one of the things that I struggle with is I write a lot of emotion and I have a lot of emotion in me. And what I'm trying to do is learn how to write it in a way that people can understand it, you
Yeah.
know? And I went through and I think I put in the Patreon thing after I read it. I put something, um, I forget what I put, but I thought it was beautiful. I highlighted so many of the emotional and the symbolic and the symbolism in it and the flow and the pacing. And I especially, Jeff knows this, I don't like unhappy endings. And I love the ending to this because I thought it was a realistic ending. It could go either way. And I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
that.
To
And I
me,
also,
yeah, I
I-
thought it was hopeful because I'm an optimist. I was like, he's gonna do it.
yeah, the
Oh, you
one
haven't read
thing,
enough Baldwin. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, the one thing I wanted, I don't know if you picked up on it, I'm sure you did. The ending, the way he finished the story, the ending, Sonny being able to share his story and the brother listening, he finally did what the mother asked him to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a complete closure,
Yeah.
of I just thought it was beautiful.
It was a complete closure, but it was also was a beginning of a new relationship, and maybe he's going to have a shot at staying sober. That was another thing he did really well, was talk about what it's like. I just thought it was a great portrait of addiction and how from when he gets seduced into it, from all the ways he tries to fight it. I mean, the dude joins the Navy in the middle of a world war. I mean, he's trying so hard and he just can't do
He
it.
just can't do
And
it.
you're just rooting. Anyway, I thought that part of it too was really, and it was done in a way that was realistic but not precious. It was sad, but like I said, maybe because I'm an optimist, I thought even though he took the sip of the drink, he might make it because he's got his music.
Yeah. And you're describing, I think, what's so beautiful about Baldwin is that he positions you using first person POV, which he doesn't always do. Sometimes he writes in third. He positions you behind the eyes of a big brother who's watching his younger brother struggle and who has a mixed feeling of both frustration and pain for what his brother's going through. And he makes you feel it. Like you're describing, like when he takes that drink, you're like, oh, like,
Mhm.
no, like, and like, yay, like, it's like you're finally playing your music and no, don't do that. Like, so there's a like, kind of, yeah, I'll just read the last line. I'll just read the last couple lines here. Heather, close yours. Um, There was a long pause while they talked up the indigo light, and a while I saw the girl put a scotch and a milk on top of the piano for Sonny. He didn't seem to notice it, but just before they started playing again, he sipped from it and looked toward me and nodded. And then he put it back on top of the piano. For me, then, as they began to play again, it glowed and shook above my brother's head like a very cup of trembling.
Mhm.
And it's like, just there's a weird like image of like a painful halo there and like just a like
Mhm.
what is this thing? It's scotch and milk. It's like dark and the light being put
Mhm.
together in the same cup. Like, it's just yeah, but I mean, this is this is what we love about Baldwin is he takes us on this emotional journey, gets us to this place of vulnerability, and then just makes us sit there while he gives us a social theme because I'm sorry, hold on one second. Riggs, did you need something? Okay, can you ask Logan to put you to bed? Great. Sorry, managing children.
No worries.
Um, yeah, so my wife is graciously picked my mom. This I'm going to talk bad about my mom here for a second on the podcast. She is flying home from Houston today, visiting my brother, and she told us to pick her up at the airport at 5. And then so we completely rearranged organization of children and schedules so that one of us could go get her at 5. And then she texted us at 4:30, right as one of us my wife was about to leave for the airport and said, never mind, plane leaves at 5, comes in at 9.
I have a stepmom like that, so I feel
Yeah.
you.
And I was like, Mom, Whitney and I are going to kill you. So my wife is going to pick up my mother at the airport right now, which means the children are like free to, and the boys had a meeting at church about going to build houses in Tijuana, Mexico. So
Oh,
my
cool.
10-year-old is running free upstairs. And yeah, that's sorry. Um, yeah, so let's look at some passage. Does it sound good to look at some passages?
Sure.
We'll look at some
So
things we talked about.
do we need to pull it up?
I'll share my screen so we can all
Okay.
look at it together.
Okay.
So we're going to look at descriptions. We're going to look at like the stream of consciousness type thing, and like places that we may be like, hey, Baldwin, help us out, man. Um, and then I want to look at some dialogue things he's doing, and we talked about the zooming in and out of time, and looking at the music section. Is there anything else y'all want to like throw on the agenda as we talk through this?
That's fine.
Can y'all see my screen?
I don't
Okay.
know if I think it's going to come up anyway, but the addiction
Very
stuff.
Yeah, we can talk about the addiction stuff. That sounds good. Yeah. So first thing is, that I want you to notice as a coach is that Baldwin immediately breaks our dialogue rules, right? Like our rule is no more than 5 to 8 paragraphs of exposition before characters start interacting. He has 10 paragraphs of exposition before characters interact here, where our narrator starts talking to Sonny's friend. So let's talk about some things he's doing here to keep us engaged while he does this exposition, these are kind of common Baldwin tricks. The first thing he's doing is he puts it in first person, which is an active choice, right? Like this isn't when you're reading somebody like Baldwin, he's making active choices as a writer. This wasn't by accident that he put this in first person. And it wasn't just a default. He doesn't always write in first person. And I think part of the reason that this is in first person is because it makes it so first person tends to be more emotionally engaging and allows for this monologue style where you can be in and out of time. So what do I mean about in and out of time? First paragraph. And what do we mean about like description? He only tells you what he cares about. I read about it in the paper, in the subway, on my way to work. I read it. I couldn't believe it. And I read it again. Then perhaps I just started at the newsprint, spelling out his name, spelling out the story. I stared at it in the swinging lights of the subway car, and the faces and the bodies of people, and in my own face, trapped in the darkness which roared outside. What do we not know? We don't know who he is. We don't know who he's reading about. We don't know where he is. So all we know is that he's in a subway car reading a newspaper and having a visceral emotional reaction to it. Because all Baldwin cares about is that you feel what he feels. He doesn't care about any of those details yet. And this is part of the way he hooks you through all of these 10 paragraphs is he gives you partial information, creating mysteries that he then has to solve, right? For you to like, who's he reading about? What happened? Who are you in relation to this person? Right? Like, why does this matter so much to you? He sets up all of these mysteries that you're like, okay, I'm invested to solve these. And he starts off with an emotional punch right away. Right? Like, so it's a technique Baldwin uses to keep us interested. He doesn't really start telling you anything tangible until the fourth paragraph. So the second paragraph, for example, is almost entirely about his emotional journey. It was not to be believed, and I kept telling myself that. Again, we don't know what's not to be believed, who it's about, or why. As I walked from the subway station to the high school, and at the same time, I couldn't doubt it. I was scared for Sonny. He became real to me again. A great block of ice settled in my belly and kept melting there slowly all day while I taught my classes algebra. It was a special kind of ice. It kept melting and sending trickles of ice water all up and down my veins, but it never got less. Sometimes it hardened and seemed to expand until I felt my guts were going to come spilling out or that I was going to choke or scream. That would always be a moment when I was remembering something specific thing Sonny had once done or said. So all he's told us is that it's about Sonny. We don't know who Sonny is to him, why, what Sonny did. This whole paragraph is just about how his character feels. It's a giant He's kicking. So the most important thing to Baldwin in the first two paragraphs is the emotional journey. Now that he's established the emotional journey, he'll start to give us some backstory. So in paragraph 3, we find out he contrasts the emotional journey, but he gives us a little nugget here. He had been picked up the evening before in a raid on an apartment downtown for peddling and using heroin. So now he starts to give us the mystery of what happened. And then in paragraph 4, we find out that Sonny is his brother. Right? Can you feel the like emotional drive first, then to giving us a little bit of detail, then to laying out for us a little bit more what's happening? Does that make sense?
Where in that paragraph do you see that it's his brother? I missed that
Uh,
entirely. I thought he was talking about a student this whole time.
oh, I couldn't
I mean,
believe
I
that.
know I caught on later.
I wrote down that it was in the 4th paragraph. Maybe I got it wrong. I kept
It
putting
is right here. I know I didn't want to believe that I'd ever see my brother going down.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah,
Oh my, you guys, I totally missed that.
yeah.
Because that was one of the things I was annoyed with. I'm like, why am I just now finding out that this is his brother and not a student?
Yeah, and would
Okay,
Baldwin
we can just erase this from the transcript.
I'll edit this out, Heather. Never fear.
But Baldwin wouldn't care that you missed it, right? Right, Jeff?
Well, and he did a good job. Like the opening, I was like, "Ooh, I want to find out more."
Yeah,
And then he kind of started to lose me because I'm like, "Who are we talking about?"
yeah.
But that was just me.
No. I think you're hitting there on what he's doing is that he wants you to, before he establishes anything else, he wants you to feel how he feels, how the character feels. Um, by the way, not autobiographical. Baldwin, this is not about Baldwin. This does not line up with his life. This is not who he was. He wrote an autobiography, Go Tell It on the Mountain, and no part of it does any of this happen. So there's a like, not only that, he doesn't have a younger brother. So there's a like, this is all strategic, like this is fiction and it's all strategically done. But so think about for a second, you're writing a story about discovering your brother's name in the newspaper for dealing heroin. What's your default? How do you start that story?
Well, before tonight, I would have probably started with my brother.
Yeah. I was on the train when I read the newsprint that my brother had been arrested from heroin.
Yep.
I was
Yeah,
so
definitely
sad.
would have introduced who you were reading about earlier.
I would have started with what the character was feeling about reading it, like Baldwin did.
Yeah. Well, Mary, I actually
Yeah.
believe that. I've read a lot of your writing. You absolutely
Yeah.
would.
I didn't hear that, Jeff.
I said you absolutely would have. Actually, I've read a
Oh,
lot of
all
your
right.
writing. I believe that about you. Yeah, I probably would have started with like, it was a dark day full of rain when I boarded the subway train, sitting on the stoop next to the woman in the green dress who looked at me angrily, tempering my mood. I took out my newspaper and I read the first line.
That would have been good.
Sonny had been right,
And then
like
you get off the subway and it's a dark and stormy night. Yeah, we
it's
see
a
where
dark
this
and
is going.
stormy night, and I feel bad, and I'm walking to class, and right, like I would have given you beat by beat. I would have given you the restrictions. What I would never have thought to do is a great block of ice settled in my belly and kept melting there
That's
slowly all day long.
beautiful. I think that is
Right,
just
like, yeah, and I think there's a lot to learn here about like, hey, this is what it's like to focus on the emotional journey of your reader, and to be like, this is what it feels like. And so, does it have to be this elevated? Does it have to be this literarily powerful? Not necessarily. Like another book we talk about all the time, another author we talk about all the time is Beloved. And she starts that book with the phrase that the house was filled with spite. She has 2 paragraphs about spite before she ever talks about anything else. And there's a like Toni Morrison kind of channeling a Baldwin thing here, but that is not a literary fiction book. That is a horror ghost story. So like I think there's something to learn here about like how we're setting up our reader and establishing their movement through what's happening. Does that make sense? Yeah. Any other thoughts on the opening? Trying to think if I had. Yeah. So a couple other
It definitely grabs you because it's not just the emotion, but it's a mystery too. Like Heather was saying, I want to know
yeah. You want to know
what's
what's going
going
on?
on.
Yeah. The action doesn't start. So talking about how he makes these 10 paragraphs go, starting off with the emotion, hooking you on the emotional journey and setting up a bunch of mysteries that you want solved, slowly solving the mysteries, only focusing on what's emotionally important to the story. The action starts in paragraph 5, but note it's not a hard transition to, like, the bell rang and my day started and the kids showed up. He's still living in this emotional moment, even though he's now talking about the students that he has and what they're doing and his day and how he's surviving this. Paragraph 6 and 7 is his present thing, like his life now that he's read this thing. So we're still in the emotional journey, even though he's giving us a little bit more touch to it. He doesn't leave the emotional push, right? Like, for example, one boy was whistling a tune, at once very complicated and very simple. This whole story is very complicated and very simple, right? Like, that's the tune is the story. It seems to be pouring out of him as though he were a bird, and it sounded very cool and moving through all the harsh, bright air, only holding its own through all those other sounds. So Baldwin's giving us, like, the lead character, the vehicle character. We're seeing his world and how he sees it, but he's keeping us centered on the emotions the character's having, and he's foreshadowing what's coming, right? Like, because in the end, this story is about a musician that doesn't ever find himself until much later in life when he's playing on stage. And
Oh,
so we set it up right away that we've got these dark emotional paragraphs, worry, anxiety, fear, and then we get a slight burst of light here. And where does the burst of light come? It comes from a boy whistling a tune that's simple and complicated, pouring out of him as though he were a bird, which is what we
I
want
kind
for
of
Sonny at
skipped
the end.
over that, but then I was remembering it when we started talking about the end and the piano and the
Yeah,
description of the music that Lindsay had said. So now it even, I think it's much more poignant than
yeah.
I'd originally even grasped. See what happens if you actually read the whole thing.
Well, and
Catch all this.
part of the reason I'm living here so much is because I want y'all to see and feel how intentional the emotional journey is that he's setting up. This isn't stream of consciousness. It's not a, like, I'm just going to sit down and write whatever comes to me. Baldwin has plotted out an emotional journey for you that's going to take you on this ride of this older brother dealing with an addict who never really finds himself until jazz, right? Like, that's the, and so he starts it here at the beginning and he focuses on it at the beginning, tempting you with little nuggets of story, but really just emotional expression. And then it's not till we get to, like, paragraphs 5 and 6 that we start to get some, like, real tangible details. Even then, we're still into the story. And then it's not until, like, much late, like here, at the end, paragraph 10, we actually get into interactions with a character. Just very different than, I think, how we've been naturally trained to tell a story. And, I think there's a beautiful aspect to this of, like, I understand, like, I would say Baldwin understands story so much that he gets that I can hook you with an emotion and keep you with an emotion for far too long, but you're gonna know how I feel and then how the character feels. And then, so that when I get to the actual interaction, you are locked in with my anxiety around my brother Sonny. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on the opening? Oh, Lindsay, you're on mute. I'm sorry.
sorry. How many words is this roughly? Because
I have no idea.
Okay.
21,000. It's the longest short story I've ever.
It is. It's a very long short story.
Okay.
I would almost consider this a novella.
I was
Yeah.
like, now, yeah. So now, like,
It's
it
got to
would
be close to
considered a
10,000
novella.
words.
I
Yeah.
think it's more. Okay.
I don't know. I have no idea. I haven't measured it. I don't know.
Okay. Sorry. I
Yeah,
just
it's
was
the
wondering.
longest short story I've ever made y'all read for
Yeah.
one of these. That's not true. Sometimes we read full books. But yeah, so another thing I wanted to look at. Let's get to page 3. Actually, we can just pick any place. We talk about, and this is actually part of where I learned it, how to use dialogue tags and body language and inner thought to shape how an utterance feels to the reader. So he sort of shuffled over to me and he said, I see you got papers, so you already know about it. There's a reflective kind of like make you feel it before you hear the words by putting the dialogue tag up front. Now, no dialogue tag. You mean Sonny? Yes, I already know about it. How come they didn't get you? Now, he could just write, I wasn't there. I stayed away from them people. But he writes, he grinned. It made him repulsive, and it also brought to mind what he looked like as a kid. I wasn't
Mhm.
there. I stayed away from them people. Baldwin's intentionally slowing us down. He's making us live in this moment a little more. He's interpreting how this vocalization feels with this tag and body language. He grinned. And then with this inner thought. Good for you. I offered him a cigarette and I watched him smoke. I watched him through the smoke. You come all the way down here just to tell me about Sonny? Right? Like, again, look at the construction of what he's doing. Good for you. You come all the way down here just to tell me about Sonny. He needs an emotional beat. Good for you. I'm going to drop dialogue. I'm going to drop, like Baldwin's going to drop body language in here in the middle of a vocalization to create space between the two topics. Now it feels like a realistic thing someone would say, and we can feel the time passing in the conversation. For somebody who hasn't given a crap about time for 10 paragraphs, all of a sudden in this vocalization, time is very important. Good for you. I offered him a cigarette and watched him smoke and watched him through the smoke. You come all the way down here just to tell me about Sonny? Right? Like, can y'all see how he's like
Yeah, he
screwing with
does
his
this a
dialogue?
couple times. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all through. He does it all the time, right? Like
It
he's
also
just
adds to the suspense because you're like, you feel the lead's anxiety and that he doesn't really want to be talking to this guy and hear what he has to say.
yeah,
He draws everything out.
yeah. And but it's so fascinating. Like Heather, you were talking about the stream of consciousness and where he like feels like time again. Something I think we can learn from Baldwin is it's not all important. We get no conversations with anybody on the subway. We get no conversations as he's walking to school. We get no conversations with any of his students as he teaches for a full day. They all leave. He's now back home, and we get a conversation with this guy, and it's the only one he cares about.
And you never get a conversation with him and his wife either.
Mm-mm.
But
She's
is that so you're saying that that's intentional and that's not him trying to set up the isolation?
I'm saying that it's intentional in that this conversation, when he's thinking about telling this story, he's like, what's important to the story? This conversation is important to the story, mostly because what he does with this conversation is he gives you a kind of clone of Sonny. This is Sonny's friend. He feels the same way about this guy that he's set up for you in the first 10 paragraphs that he feels about Sonny. We're talking about the vehicle character. He feels about Sonny. And then at the end of it, this guy says to him, it's going to be really hard. Your relationship with Sonny from now on is going to be really hard. Right? Like, and look at how when we get to the what's important, He slows down, adding more exposition. We've got this great kind of moving dialogue. They're going back and forth. It's well crafted, but everybody's talking, everything's moving. And then we get to the part that is emotional, and we're back into like paragraph exposition. Look, don't tell me your sad story. If it was up to me, I'd give you one. Then I felt guilty, probably for never having supposed that the poor bastard had a story of his own, much less a sad one. And I asked, what's going to happen to him now? He didn't answer this. He was off by himself someplace. Funny thing, he said. Now, can you feel it slowing down? Funny thing, he said. And from his tone of voice, we might have been discussing the quickest way to get to Brooklyn. He hasn't told us anything about tone of voice this whole time. And all of a sudden, he wants to tell us about tone of voice. When I saw the papers this morning, the first thing I asked myself was if I had anything to do with it. I felt sort of responsible. So we've got a segment change here. We talk about like topics and emotional changes as segment change. He's starting a new segment. There's a new emotional change. He gives us a paragraph of exposition. He's made an emotional mess, and now he's going to make us sit in it. I began to listen more carefully. The subway station was on the corner just before us, and I stopped. He stopped too. We were in front of the bar, and he ducked in slightly, peering, but whoever was looking for him didn't seem to be there. The jukebox was blasting away, something black and bouncy, and I half watched the barmaid as she danced away from the jukebox to place her bar. So many details all of a sudden. And I watched her face, and she was laughingly responding to someone said to her, and she kept time to the music. When she smiled, one saw the little girl, one sensed the doom, still a struggling woman beneath the battered face of the semi-whore. Why? Why does he pause here to tell us all of this? Because he created an emotional change here, and he's making us sit in it
Mm-hmm.
as we sit in this moment. I never gave Sonny nothing, the boy finally said. But a long time ago, I came to high school and Sonny asked me how it felt. He paused. I couldn't bear to watch him. I watched the barmaid. I listened to the music, which seemed to be causing the pavement to shake. I told him it felt great. The music stopped. The barmaid paused and I watched the jukebox until the music began. It did. Right? Like, can you feel the like slow down, the use of
Mm-hmm.
exposition, the use of sudden description to make you sit in this emotional moment where this guy feels guilty for what's going to happen to Sonny? Like it's this is why this is why Baldwin's a master, because he like forces us to live in that moment. And when we say like, "Hey, make an emotional mess," and then zoom into that moment with your exposition, and make the reader sit there in that moment and feel that emotion, that's what Baldwin's doing. Yeah. Any thoughts?
Well, I'm curious to see if anybody else got that emotional resonancy from that.
Resonance.
Yes, from that state, from that paragraph.
Yeah.
I did. I knew
Did you?
that. Yeah, I knew that the brother knew that this guy was in the process of confessing he's responsible for the beginning of the drug addiction, even though, of course, it was Sonny's choice and everything. I knew that's where it was headed, and the brother
Yeah.
knew that it was headed, and he didn't want to hear it. And so it was I felt almost suspenseful
Yeah.
because you're like, oh my God, just get it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, this paragraph kind of lost me.
Okay.
I like the one before it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But now knowing more about the end with the correlation with the music, I see what he's doing.
Yeah.
So
And then
that's I was just
here,
curious what everybody else thought.
no, yeah. And then here he picks up pace again, right? What's going to happen? We're back into dialogue, quick back and forths, right? And it's interesting because these quick back and forths give you no content, right? What's going to happen to him now? They'll send him away to some place. They'll try to cure him. Maybe he'll even think he'll stick to habit. They'll let him loose, he gestured, throwing his cigarette into the gutter. That's all. What do you mean that's all? But I knew what he meant. I mean, that's all. Right? Like he takes time here and care to like repeat this back and forth. It's not necessary, but it's part of the the emotional texture of what's going on. And it's so like earlier when I said like watching Baldwin's pacing as we read him and pay attention to how he's like crafting our emotional journey, it's that like watching where he slows down, watching where he speeds back up, watching where he's like giving us no content. He's just words. What do you mean that's all? But I knew what he meant. I mean that's all. Right? Like it's just this like giving us this realistic back and forth that creates this emotional texture um, that isn't necessarily driving the plot, but it's driving the emotional journey. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah. And that I just read a little piece of it, but that you mean what's all comes keeps going all the way down to here, right? Like tell me what I said last. Why does he want to die? He must want to die. He's killing himself. Why does he want to die? Right? Like we get to this like big climax. He looked at me in surprise. He looked at his lips. He doesn't want to die. He wants to live. Don't nobody ever want to die. And it's just a like, you know, great kind of emotional conclusion here. Um, okay, page 5. Baldwin interrupts everything with a letter from his brother. And that's part of the reason I picked this because people are always asking, can I use letters in my story? How did y'all feel about the letter from the brother?
Well, for me, this was the first time I realized it was the brother, but that's my own fault.
No, he kind of
So
nails
I,
you with dear brother. Like he kind of
so,
hits you with it. Yeah.
so I appreciated it.
Yeah. Heather, I didn't warn you in advance. Mary knows because she's been on these before with Baldwin, but you can't drink Baldwin fast. It's kind of like
Yeah,
drinking a
that's what I'm
port wine.
seeing.
You got to
That's what I'm
spend some
seeing
time with
here.
him. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
How do
This has actually been very good dissection. I'm gonna assimilate all this and go back
Okay.
and read it, knowing what I know now.
Yeah.
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 I
For
I liked the letter because it was so gosh darn sad. I mean, I I, d- but I don't have a strong anti-letter bias in prose.
I do, but this one I like.
Okay, well, what's
Yeah,
your
what's the
anti-letter
bias?
bias?
Um, letters are big. I feel like often they're big chunks of exposition.
Mhm.
Ah,
Um, I often feel like it's the author trying to cheat. Um, like a lot of times when authors put letters in, they're really just giving summaries of exposition and they're trying to put them in a character voice to get away with giving us a big summary of plot. And my question of any summary is, do you need it? And if you don't need it, you should cut it. And if you do need it, you should make it more engaging by making it an actual scene, not a summary. So letters are often just excuses for summary. I like Baldwin's letter because it's not a summary. It actually tells us very little.
Yeah, it doesn't tell. Yeah.
Yeah, what it is it's a radical change in our emotional perspective of Sonny because we've hated Sonny. So far, Sonny's been anxiety producing and scary, and the conversation with the friend ends with this big, like, things are gonna get worse, right? Like, Sonny, this is gonna be hard for you. Things are gonna get worse. And then we get this letter from Sonny that's actually very sweet and very sad and
but
very,
also we learned that the reason he wrote the narrator wrote the letters, his little girl died.
yeah, yeah.
So
So we get this big, and
Yeah,
we don't,
almost that paragraph before it almost has more of the punch, I think.
yeah.
and I didn't write Sonny and send him anything for a long time. When I
Mhm.
finally did, it was just after the little girl died. And he wrote me
Yeah.
back
And
and
he
like,
wrote me
And
back and it
if
felt like a bastard. I mean,
yeah,
yeah. And then
yeah,
he's reading this and it's like, oh, I'm so glad to hear from you. It's like, oh, just
But I
kiss the
think
knife a
what
little more.
Jeff,
yeah,
I think I'm hearing you say, maybe I'm not right. He's forcing us to switch to get out of one emotional mode of how we're reading it
yeah,
right. And
Yeah,
getting
well,
into the brothers, each of them are enhanced by the letter. So we have to switch. We have to get
yeah.
out of, yeah.
And this is a fascinating, so like, yeah, so Mary, to like affirm what I think we're all saying is that what happens with the letter, and the reason I think this letter works is because it serves as this really powerful emotional switch in the story where we've been angry at Sonny, we've been anxious about Sonny, and then we, mind you, we didn't even know the narrator had a little girl. We didn't know he had any kids. We
And
didn't
now
know,
she's dead.
and now she's dead, and he doesn't tell us how she died
Till
until the
later,
last
right.
the couple pages, right? Like he doesn't tell us how she died until the last couple pages. All he cares about is the emotional switch, and that's all he gives you is the emotion. He's like being succinct on purpose. Look, here's a giant emotional switch. My little girl died, which made me feel like the bastard.
Mhm.
Right? Like the whole time Sonny's been the bastard. Now I feel like the bastard. And then he lays it on double thick with a letter from Sonny that's really sweet and like genuine.
And how I experienced it, I kind of fought it. I didn't want to switch
Mhm.
where I was before the letter.
Yeah.
So it does the writing, certainly it was a strategy, I'm sure, you know.
Yeah. And so I would say, like, if you want to use a letter, this is probably going to be my answer to writers from now on. If you want to use a letter, I need to know what it's like as an editor. I need to know what it's emotionally doing to the reader's journey. I need to know how it's impacting the reader's emotional journey, not so much the plot. I need to know what the emotional component of it is. Um, yeah, we don't get backstory and really understand what's happening. He has this conversation with Sonny
Hmm.
driving home, and we don't get any real backstory until we get to page 7. And then all of a sudden he crushes us. Like we've had this very free flowing, light to read conversation between like post letter between the brothers, seeing each other again for the first time. And then all of a sudden, do you mind? He asked if we asked the driver to drive alongside the park on the west side. I haven't seen the city in so long. Of course not, I said. I was afraid that I might sound as if though I were humoring him, but I hoped he wouldn't take it that way. And then he crushes us with this giant exposition.
Yeah, it's poignant, right?
It's pointed, and all of a sudden it's one of these places again where we're back into getting details that, and this time what I felt the details were doing, y'all may have had a different feeling about it, but I was reading, I was like, why here? Why now? But what he's doing is he's tying the two boys, the two men together. And he's showing us they are family, right?
Mhm.
Like, because this is all about their shared experiences and what they both came out of. And so we're moving from to like now chart the whole story, this emotional explosion of anxiety and fear with no details about even who we're nervous about, to giving us a little bit of an emotional journey around Sonny and then contrasting it with this boy whistling, to then a conversation with Sonny's childhood friend that started drugs and some major foreboding about how this is going to go terribly, to then a hard emotional shift to this letter where we suddenly care about them, to now giving us a conversation between the two of them where everything feels normal, and now a shared history, right? Like, can you feel that like emotional craft where he's like bringing you an uplift now around like, hey, care about Sonny, care about their lives, care about who they are, right? Like you know, it's mean. Um, anyway, did y'all have this is one of those places where we are talking about where he like zooms into detail. Um, like,
I just thought it was to me, I thought it was another full circle moment with a lot of irony where he says, but I live in a housing project now. Like
Yeah.
it's a different one than we grew up in, but it's another housing project. It's the same people live there, i.e. the same kind of people. It's the same danger.
Yeah.
And I'm bringing him back to that when I
Yeah.
should be taking him someplace where he's can be safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that
Yeah. No.
like a lot of that brought me a lot of anxiety. It was like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Well, and this is followed by a conversation with his mother, a flashback to a conversation with his mother where the anxiety returns because his mother is also terrified for Sonny, right?
I
Like,
think that mom's premonition.
yeah. And she's like, Sonny's not going to be okay. So there's a like, he gives us these like high, beautiful moments and then pulls us back into the anxiety. And my experience reading it was like, now that I actually cared about Sonny, the anxiety of his mother was twice what the anxiety was at the beginning of the book, right? Like he gave me a high and then crashed me. And when he
Yeah.
crashed me back down with this conversation with the mom, I, um, I was now like 10 times more worried, about Sonny. Um, This is also a Baldwin thing. Baldwin will do long speeches. I don't recommend this. Part of the way he gets away with it, and this isn't me saying this, this is other people that say this all the time. Part of the way that he gets away with it is he's so good at character voice. He's so good in writing in dialect that he gets away with these long speeches because you feel like you can hear the character talking. He used to have a job in the mill, she said, and like all young folks, he just liked to perform on Saturday nights. Saturday nights, him and your father would drift around to different places, go dancing and things like that, or just sit around with people they knew, and your father's brother would sing. He had a fine voice and play along with himself on a guitar, right? Like, so again, you get he's pulling in all those themes, but you can just kind of feel her voice in the run-on sentence, in the like comma construction, in the unnecessary words that like people who haven't spent a lot of time in educational circles use. Like there's a cadence to her voice that is unique. And so you get kind of lost in somebody talking to you. But that's how Baldwin gets away with these long speeches, is they're in a very distinct character voice. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we feel like we live it a little bit. And again, notice how he's hammering the theme. But if you haven't read the story, the first time you read the story, you don't even know you're being hammered with the theme. But again, we have a two brothers. The younger one's a musician, and in his carefree attempt to live, which remember the friend said, he's not dying. He's not trying to kill himself. He's trying to live. In his carefree attempt to live, mixed with alcohol, he gets run over by a car. Right? Like she's just telling you what's going to happen to Sonny, but we don't even know that it's going or what happened to Sonny, but we don't even connect it because the character voices are so strong and you're so caught up in the emotional journey. You don't realize that Baldwin's literally beating you over the head with the theme of the story. Um, yeah. I'm trying to think if there were any other major parts I wanted to talk about. Anything else you wanted to talk? Any other paragraphs or anything else you wanted to look at?
Can we look at the music stuff? I'd
Yeah,
be
let's
interested
look at
to
the
hear what
music.
you say about that.
I forgot about the music.
I just was so impressed by that.
Yeah. So, and for those that like anybody listening to this that didn't read it, you still can. It's free online. In the end, there's a big build up, which I always feel bad about looking these up online. I don't know if they're supposed to be free. This is a university that just posted this online. You Google Sonny's Blues and it comes up. And so part of me is like, I don't know that they're supposed to do this. But anyway, one of the longest conversations is this conversation at the end with him and his brother talking about music. And it leads into, well, his brother, there's a scene where he and his brother are talking about who he wants to be. There's a scene where he runs away from where he's staying. And then They run back into each other. I think the music starts on page. Yeah, here's the nightclub. Sorry, I'm trying to decide where to pick up to read. Uh, Here we go. This is probably a good place. Um, they were going to play soon, and Creole installed me by myself at a table in a dark corner. Then I watched them, Creole and the little black man named Sonny. Sorry, Creole and the little black man and Sonny and the others, while they horsed around, just standing below the bandstand. The light from the bandstand spilled just a little short of them, and watching them laughing and gesturing and moving about, I had the feeling that they, nevertheless, were being most careful not to step into the circle of light too suddenly. That if they moved into the light too suddenly without thinking, they would perish in a flame. So already he's like setting up the dance, right? Like it's just this beautiful,
And the dark
complete
and the light.
in the dark and the light, and like them not wanting to move into things too quickly, them moving in unison together. Um, while I watched, one of them, a small black man, moved into the light and crossed the bandstand and started fooling around with his drums. Then, being funny and being also extremely ceremonious, Creole took Sonny by the arm and led him to the piano. A woman's voice called Sonny's name, and a few hands started clapping, and Sonny, also being funny and being ceremonious, and so touched, I think, that he could have cried, but neither hiding it nor showing it, riding it like a man, grinned and put both hands to his heart and bowed from the waist. Creole then went to the bass fiddle, and a lean, very bright-skinned brown man jumped on the bandstand and picked up his horn. So there they were. An atmosphere on the bandstand in her room began to change and tighten. Someone stepped into the microphone and announced them. Then there were all kinds of murmurs. Some people at the bar shushed. The waitresses ran around. And we could go on, right? Like I can go on reading the description, but it's
Yeah.
this beautiful kind of zoom in to the
And then he
stage.
really describes, like in the last three paragraphs of the piece,
Yeah.
the give and the take of the way it is a dance.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
way, like a dance, but also they're kind of a hive mind.
Yeah. Moving in and out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yet as I watched Creel's face and as they neared the first end of the set, I had a feeling something had to happen, something I hadn't heard. Then they finished. There was the scattered applause, and then, without an instant warning, Creel started into something else. It was almost sardonic. It was, Am I Blue? And as though he commanded, Sonny began to play. Something began to happen, and Creel let out the reins. The dry, low black man said something awful on the drums. Creole answered. The drums talked back, and the horn insisted, sweet and high, slightly detached perhaps, and Creole listened, commenting now and then, dry and driving, beautiful and calm and old. Right? Like you get that like you're talking about, Lindsay, that like beautiful give and
This
take of
is a
dialogue.
really good description of how jazz improvisation goes.
Yeah.
This is phenomenal,
Yeah.
actually.
It's amazing. And it's
Yeah.
this beautiful, and like on the emotional journey we're on, this is the first time Sonny's found his people, that we've seen it. He's had his people the whole time, but this is the first time we are experiencing Sonny and his community. And it's this kind of
And
like,
not just his people, but that he's crazy talented.
yeah, yeah. When he's talking about playing the piano, the brother thinks he's crazy.
Yeah.
So you also think he's crazy. You're like, can he even play the piano? I don't even know if he can play the piano. Yeah, 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 yeah. Anyway, it's a beautiful. I thanks for pulling us down here, Lindsay. This is a beautiful
Oh, shoot,
part of the
sure.
piece. Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to talk about around it?
I
Okay.
just really appreciate the detailed breakdown that you did because I really saw how genius this was in a new way.
Yeah, I feel like part of the reason we do this, we read these short stories and novellas, is because I think there's so much to learn from writers like Baldwin, even if we don't like his politics, right? Like I know people get frustrated by Baldwin's politics. He was very anti-America. He's a gay black man that ran to Paris because he felt rejected by his country, and it's his work is often about the abuse that Black people face in the world. This piece specifically isn't, but his work is often about that. And so he could be a very controversial writer, but there's so much to learn from what he's doing technically on the page that even if you don't like his politics, it's it's a shame not to learn from him because he's such an amazing writer. But yeah, so thanks for hanging out with him for that.
Yeah, and I appreciate all the conversation back and forth, everybody's interpretation and what they brought to the conversation. It's interesting.
Yeah. Any last words, Mary? You want a last word?
No. It was a good analysis. Great analysis.
All right. Yeah, we'll do another one of these. I think not in like 4 weeks. I think we have another short story we're looking at and reading from a different.
Well, you did well at picking one that wasn't terribly sad at the end.
I was trying, Mary. I was trying. Now it does end in the Baldwin way of like, I'm not going to let you know how this actually. I'm going to make you determine how you feel.
That's okay. You can pick another one like that.
Yeah.
Mary, I like happy things. Life is too hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Mary always gets mad at me when we've done these in the past.
I don't. I never
and
get
I pick
mad.
a book that's like her legs were cut off, her head was cut off. Yeah.
When I was in the 6th grade, they made us read like 3 things in a row where people that were so traumatic. One of them was The Yearling. I've never forgiven them for making us read that. I think
Where the Red Fern Grows. That was 6th grade
that was
also.
the second one, and then I don't remember what the third one was. And I was just
Sounder, maybe.
I don't remember, but it was two of
Red
two.
Badge
Those
of
were 2 of
Courage.
the 3, and
Red Badge of Courage. Yeah, it was all of
there's
it.
no.
And I remember how traumatized I was with Where the Red Fern Grows.
Yes.
We all were taking turns reading it out loud.
Yeah.
No.
And it's like, I made my mother call in sick the day the dog stopped. I was like, there's no way. There's just no way.
That's hysterical. Yeah. That one's just mean. He's
The
literally just telling the story to kill dogs. That's all he's doing.
Oh,
And the yearling
Yeah.
kills his own pet.
Yeah. It's awful.
you know,
Why?
I have no problems reading all of like the serial killer stories, but just don't touch the animals.
The animals.
That's the Hollywood rule. When you can kill all the people you want, just don't kill the dog.
Yeah. What's that? I think
Well,
it's
that would happen with John Wick.
Yeah.
I know. They broke a big rule there.
I did. That's why I won't watch that movie, because the dog dies.
But then he goes on a 4-movie binge revenging the dog. He kills everybody for killing his dog.
Heather, there's a movie, I don't even remember the name of it, but it's British and it was this quirky comedy and the dog gets killed. It's the second act break. And I was like, what the F?
Oh.
I am completely traumatized now.
Well, Bambi.
You never watched this movie.
Well, any Disney movie, right?
Any
Yeah,
Disney
right.
movie,
Yeah, geez.
Yeah,
Yes.
don't be a parent in a Disney movie. You'll die
No.
within the first act. Yeah.
No, I know. And yeah, don't live where Jessica Fletcher writes books.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
I believe she was really the killer, Heather.
I haven't heard that theory before, and I think there's probably something to it. I mean, how else do you get inspiration? She didn't have AI back then, right? She couldn't
No.
brainstorm with ChatGPT.
Yeah. The show always start off with her on a typewriter.
I know.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Good seeing you.
Yeah.
Have
Bye,
a good
everybody.
evening, you guys. Enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, you too, everybody.
Bye.